Tonight, the relationship some people say sounds like a real-life Silence of the Lambs.
Missing women, a terrifying suspect, and the detective who risks her life to solve the case. An all-new 2020 starts right now.
It's a baffling case.
It's baffling.
To have missing women in this town of Ashland is a big deal.
A huge
Unusual.
deal. Very, very unusual.
Elizabeth was very naive. She would trust anybody and everybody. She was like, why haven't I heard from her and I can't find her?
The last known images of Elizabeth Griffith were recorded while she was shopping inside this Walmart.
It seemed like a very short time frame that people started to look for Elizabeth, that now Stacy is gone.
Just love to dance and just have fun with the kids. Just a bundle of joy.
She's like, some nice guy stopped to help.
You told her, let him go. Tell
Yeah.
him to leave. You've got help coming.
Yeah. And
She wouldn't. But now, a phone call that would change everything. A third woman taken.
There was a female and that she had been held captive.
Sounds like something out of a movie.
Absolutely.
A horror movie.
You can hear her desperation for help.
It's a chilling call.
Oh, come on. Just set the phone down.
Did you know anything about what you were about to face?
No.
And I saw her hand. I saw her outstretched hand through the window.
And then the line goes silent.
Yep.
What is the address to your emergency? 4th Street Laundromat. What's the problem? I've been assaulted.
It's 6:48 a.m. in September 2016. Emergency dispatchers receive a 911 call from a terrified woman. She's whispering that she's being held at a house near the laundromat and that her captor is asleep at her side.
Is he in the same room with you?
Yes.
Does he have a weapon?
He's got a taser.
Is there any way you can get out of the building?
I don't know without waking him, and I'm scared. His bedroom is closed, and he made it so it would make noise.
And we have officers we're sending.
Officer Kurt Dorsey rushes to the scene, leaving his siren off so that it does not alert the abductor. So, what were you doing when the call came in?
We responded from the police station. We were trying to be stealthy. We were told that the suspect was sleeping, so we wanted to approach and not make a bunch of noise.
You weren't even sure the call was real, right?
I didn't believe it was real at first, just because of the town that we live in. Just not a typical call that we would get in Ashland.
Ashland, Ohio. It's a small city between Columbus and Cleveland, home to more than 50 churches and a large Amish community.
Ashland is a quiet, rural community. There's about 20,000 people who live there. It has a university, a lot of farm field.
So this is Ashland. What can you tell me about the town?
Well, as you can see, it's rolling hills, scenic. A lot of community stuff going on. Football games. The county fair. A lot of farm animals, a lot of competitions and shows for kids to get involved with.
Typical small town where everyone knows everyone, right?
Yes, exactly.
Kim Major has had 23 years of service as a detective in Ashland.
I handled violent crime and I handled sex offenses and child abuse. I'm over 1,000 of those cases.
1,000?
Yeah.
At the time of that terrifying 911 call, the community is already on edge. Just a week before, police discovered that a woman in town had simply vanished.
Well, there was a missing person named Elizabeth Griffith.
Yes. Elizabeth was known in our town. I had had contact with her. I think we all had. A lot of the officers would have an eye on her.
She was kind of a vulnerable person, and we helped her quite a bit as a police division.
She used to call them quite frequently. She would call them about anything and everything. Just like, I heard it's going to snow today. Is there any chance that the roads will be closed? She was definitely a character.
Facing mental health challenges, 29-year-old Elizabeth Griffith attended meetings at a peer support center called LifeWorks.
Elizabeth was very bubbly and energetic. The first time I met Elizabeth was at LifeWorks, and she was coming down the hallway and I was coming opposite of her. And she was like, "Hey, you're new here." And I was like, "Yeah?" And she was like, "You want to be my friend?" And I was like, "Sure, let's be friends."
She was embraced not just by LifeWorks, but also by her church family.
Elizabeth was a really sweet girl, a simple person. She liked to make people laugh. She liked to sing. She loved to worship. She would raise her hand the highest during worship. Even though she was tone deaf, she'd sing louder than anyone else. She was very much with the heart of a child. It was a little harder for her to grasp some things sometimes.
She was a very loving person and a very loyal person. Certainly financial challenges, certainly medical challenges, mental health challenges.
She lived on her own in her own apartment. She did have a case manager that kind of helped her with daily life struggles. She was always introducing herself to everybody, very outgoing.
The community knew Elizabeth, and she was one of ours, and she was taken care of.
But then Elizabeth's support team realizes no one has seen her in weeks.
We were at LifeWorks and the phone rang, and it was Elizabeth's case manager. And she had asked if we had seen Elizabeth lately. She was like, "I can't find her." So I called her cell phone and it just went straight to voicemail, which was highly unlikely for Elizabeth. I was like, something's not right.
I was concerned because where would she have gone? What could have happened?
She wasn't the type of person that would go missing, so we sort of knew something was wrong there.
This is an area where I would often see Elizabeth Griffith walking, and just days before her disappearance, I stopped and chatted with her right up here.
It was a baffling case.
It was baffling. We didn't know if she had taken off or did she meet somebody online and leave. We didn't know if it was suicide. We didn't know where she was.
Everybody was taking to social media, posting pictures of her. Everyone was looking for her. Everybody was praying for her.
Police began to investigate, speaking to Elizabeth's neighbors and friends and tracing her last known steps.
I began talking with some of the public transit drivers because she would often use public transportation.
Before she disappeared, records showed that Elizabeth had taken the bus to go shopping.
The last known images of Elizabeth Griffith were recorded while she was shopping inside this Walmart.
There's video of her going through the aisles and then waiting for the bus.
She disappeared shortly thereafter, and she wouldn't be the only one. It turns out there's another missing woman in Ashland.
I said, "All right, Mom, I love you. I'll talk to you tomorrow." And that was the last we ever heard from her.
Police in Ashland, Ohio are searching for missing woman Elizabeth Griffith, and then they discover there's a second woman in town who also has mysteriously disappeared. 43-year-old Stacy Stanley, a divorced mom, devoted to her sons, Curtis and Corey.
One of my mom's favorite songs was Leonard Skinner's Freebird. It's a pretty good song.
Corey likes simple pleasures, playing music, riding his motorcycle on the highways of Ohio, raising his baby daughter. For him, family is everything, and his bond with his mother, Stacy, has always been particularly tight.
Good boy, you kissed your brother.
How would you describe her?
Very loving and caring, to do anything for anybody, you know, give the shirt off her back if she needed to.
Always there for her kids, calling you consistently. You know, if you didn't pick up, she'd call you like 1,000 times.
My sister was a very outgoing person.
It's a perfect time to make this wish. Have a happy birthday. Love Grandma and Grandpa's family. $5.
Growing up, we were so close in age and we shared the same room and stuff growing up.
Karaoke?
She would sing some songs.
Now and then when I see your face.
She loved punk rock music and the look, too.
Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine. I actually had a video of her singing it when we were kids. I was videotaping her singing that.
So she was not afraid to get on stage and perform?
No.
Even as adults, you were pretty close.
Yeah, I'd come home from work and she'd have big bunches of food made up, and I was like, oh, wow.
I hear she was a great cook.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get look like this over nothing, you know.
She fed you well, huh?
Yes,
sir.
Absolutely.
And Stacy was a new grandmother to Curtis's 3-year-old daughter.
She was a great grandmother. She was spoiled the hell out of her for sure.
Just love to dance and just have fun with the kids. Just a bundle of joy.
Stacy lived in Greenwich, Ohio, 30 minutes from Ashland.
Stacy was not from our county. She was from a county that butts up to our county, and she had visited Ashland.
It was September 8th, 2016, when she takes a fateful drive to Ashland to run some errands.
She went to Walmart to get some gardening supplies because she loved doing her gardening. And she also went to get her nails done. And then after that, she was getting some gas and to come back home.
It's around 8:30 at night when Stacy calls her son Corey from this gas station. She's stranded here with a flat tire and needs help.
She was like freaking out. And I said, well, just calm down. We'll find somebody to help you.
Were you worried?
Oh, not necessarily out the rip.
It's just a flat tire, you're thinking?
Just a flat tire, yeah.
They're able to find a family friend to meet Stacy at the gas station, but it turns out a stranger has also shown up to help.
She's like, some nice guy stopped to help. I had then told her to tell him to kick rocks. We got somebody coming to help you. And
she wouldn't?
Well, she's like, oh, he's a nice guy, just stopped to help. And so my mom, you know the person she was friendly and talked to people. This guy takes over and he changes the tire. She offers him a ride home. And I said, all right, Mom. Well, I said, call me in the morning. She's like, okay, I love you. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I said, all right, love you too, Mom.
But the next day, Corey and Curtis don't receive the usual flurry of calls from their mom.
And then I talked to my aunt, and I'm like, hey, Mom's not picking up. I don't know what's going on. We ended up breaking into her house to get in, and she had 2 little dogs. She loved them little dogs, little chihuahuas.
Her dogs were still in their kennel, so we knew something was going on.
The Huron County Sheriffs had put out a bolo, be on the lookout for her vehicle.
We went driving the roads,
looking for her.
In case she might have had an accident, was down in a ravine or a ditch or anything. We went looking, driving the routes from Ashland back to Greenwich.
Within hours, Stacy's family spreads out across the streets of Ashland, trying to find any trace of her.
We went down to the gas station, the BP, where she was last seen.
I had printed off like almost 2,000 or 3,000 flyers. We were just passing them out and putting them up everywhere. There's probably a good 70 of us, at least, out there handing flyers out.
Detective Brian Evans is on patrol in Ashland when he spots the family.
As I was driving around the city of Ashland, I met up with different groups of her family who was actively searching for Stacy at the time. They were in different groups knocking on doors. They were going down to some abandoned buildings.
Well, I came across the radio that somebody had reported her car on East 9th Street in Ashland. We beat the cops over to the car.
And I opened the door, and I looked, I was like, the seat was all the way back. So my mom was short, so it didn't make sense why the seat was back.
I had grabbed her cigarette container she put her cigarette butts in, and I happened to see a Camel filtered cigarettes in there, and I was like, these aren't my mom's. My mom don't smoke these. At this point, you know, it's alarming because somebody else was in this car.
So now it's not just Elizabeth Griffith who is missing in Ashland.
It seemed like a very short time frame that people started to look for Elizabeth, that now Stacy is gone. The odds of two women missing at the same time just did not make sense whatsoever.
To have two missing women in this town of Ashland is a big deal.
It's a huge
Unusual?
deal. Very, very unusual for a county this size to have anyone missing, much less two women missing.
The community had concern. The word was starting to spread around.
We were like, what's really going on? It's Ashland. Like, stuff like that doesn't happen in Ashland.
Then, a heart-stopping clue in a window at the back of the house.
Sounds like something out of a movie.
Absolutely.
A horror movie.
I'm a 911 dispatcher, Ashland Police Department. I've been a dispatcher for 26 years.
What is your typical day like?
I go to work, sign into all the computers. We usually have 6 to 8 screens, depending on what center you're at. Answer calls. You never know when the call will come in or what kind of call it's going to be.
Your most memorable call?
Probably this one.
911, what is the address to your emergency?
September 13th, 2016, 6:48 a.m.
Yep, the end of my shift.
By September 13, 2016, Elizabeth Griffith had not been seen for a month. Stacy Stanley for 5 days.
You're working the dispatch and you get that call.
At first I couldn't hear her. It was real quiet. She was whispering.
What's the problem? I've been ghosted.
She says, I've been abducted.
Yes.
Your reaction?
My reaction was to find out where she was at first, to get her out of there.
20 West 81st Street.
The dispatcher had told us that there was a female and that she had been held captive somewhere near a laundromat. So we immediately start to drive towards the area of the call.
Where's she at now? Asleep. Where's she sleeping at? In the bedroom.
I asked her more questions, trying to get as much as I could before he woke up.
You have to be calm, but there's an urgency.
Yes.
The woman says she's calling from her abductor's phone.
He had fallen asleep at some point, and she was able to secure this phone.
You couldn't trace the call back then?
Couldn't trace the call. This was a flip phone. It was not coming back to a location.
Do you need an ambulance? Are you bleeding from anywhere? Not anymore. Where were you bleeding from? You don't have to talk if you don't need to, okay?
Why couldn't she get out on her own?
Well, he had taken the doorknobs off, apparently.
As Officer Dorsey heads to the scene, there's a problem. How to find her?
The caller does not know her exact address, but she tells 911 she's being held captive in a house next to this laundromat. The problem for police is that there are 2 very similar houses in this area.
There were 2 houses right here?
Yes. 2 identical houses.
And you didn't know which one?
No, they were nearly identical, both the same color, same shape, 2-story. We had no idea which one.
They can't just gang bust into a house. What if he'd have woke up with a weapon and hurt her? So they had to find her quietly. So they were outside looking for her.
So how do you approach the house knowing that the captor is asleep?
So we first started to just look in windows to see if we could see anything. Just check different doors to see if we can pinpoint which house she's in.
As police conduct the search, there's a heart-stopping moment when the caller says she has awakened her abductor.
Oh, come on. Just set the phone down.
You can hear the sheer terror in her voice when he wakes up.
Yep.
And then the line goes silent. It must have seemed like
Yes,
that.
forever.
What's going through your mind?
I'm just praying they find her.
Five agonizing minutes later, she's back.
Yep.
Are you still there? Okay. Do you hear any officers outside? Okay, they're in the area.
What was it like to hear her voice again?
It was good. Glad she was still there and not hurt. And he was still sleeping. So that's good.
You can hear her desperation for help.
It's a chilling call.
It's chilling.
I remember as I was checking the doors, panic starts to set in. I wanted to find her so bad. We're going back and forth between the two houses. The dispatcher had told us at some point that she heard a door.
Do you hear him?
I remembered that I had pulled on a door hard and it made a noise that I didn't intend. So I ran around the house that we were currently at and looked towards the direction of the other house.
And they tell him to come back. She said, hurry, hurry.
And I saw her hand. I saw her outstretched hand through the window, and I knew at that point she was in there. I would have gone through the wall to get to her.
A hand right on the window. That's pretty eerie. Sounds like something out of a movie.
Absolutely.
A horror movie.
We went to the door, it was locked, and I asked the dispatcher to relay to her that she needed to unlock the door.
Can you unlock the door at all?
She's able to unlock it, and we're able to open it.
Hurry up, get out here. Where is he? Still sleeping. Still sleeping? Yeah. Okay, they have her.
It took 19 long minutes to get her out. What was it like when you finally hear Detective Dorsey?
It's the best sound ever. I was glad because the officers were safe. She was safe.
You smiled a little because you're proud of her?
Yeah, proud of her.
What a relief.
What was it like when you came face to face with the victim?
I'll never forget the way that she looked at us. She looked shocked, like she had seen a ghost. She was fully nude. I don't think I've ever felt so much relief to find her. Divine intervention and a good dispatcher led us to that house and ultimately that door.
So now police need to find out what happened in this house.
Hurry up, get out here. Where is he? Still sleeping. Still sleeping? Yeah. Okay, they have her.
With the terrified 911 caller safely in their custody, police turned their attention to her abductor, a 40-year-old man identified as Sean Great. The dramatic moment when he's apprehended is heard on that open line from the 911 call.
Once we got Mr. Great into custody, he was handcuffed. He ended up in my car. So I began interviewing Mr. Great.
And how do you know her again? We spend a lot of time lately together. We go eat lunch every day.
The victim, a 36-year-old woman, police identify as Jane Doe to protect her privacy. It's transported to the Ashland Police Department. Police are desperate for information. No easy task, as the woman was traumatized and still in shock. But Ashland police have a secret weapon. Enter Detective Kim Major.
Kim is the best interviewer that I've ever seen. She's able to speak with anyone, whether that be small kids or a violent criminal.
I was the only female detective for the majority of my career. Is that good? Is that good?
Major balanced the demands of detective work with the responsibilities of being a mother to 3.
That morning, Detective Kim Major is in the shower getting ready for work, and she misses 2 phone calls from her captain at the Ashland Police Department.
And I called him back, and he said, well, he gruffed at me and said 2 calls and a text. And he said, there's been a kidnapping. We've rescued the woman, and I need you to come in and interview her.
You come to the station, and what happens?
The victim was taken into my office at the end of this hallway, and that's where I spoke with her.
She had been tortured emotionally and physically.
Yes, she had. So I bring her into my office.
The effects of the woman's harrowing ordeal were immediately apparent.
The first thing I noticed is her appearance, of course. I could see that she had been victimized. The second thing I noticed was that I could smell the scent of her perpetrator. It's testosterone.
You could smell him.
I could.
What did you learn about Jane?
I learned that she had met Sean Great. She eats her noon meal at what we call the Croc Center. They provide free meals at noon. Jane Doe would eat there sometimes, and that's where she met Sean Great.
He was tall like my brother, my older brother, and he's kind of goofy, but he struck me as kind. Like when I would run into him at lunch, and if neither one of us was doing anything, we'd just walk around Ashland.
This is a woman so strong in her Christian faith that no man's phone number is in her phone, not one. No man crosses the threshold of her door.
He let me know that he would be interested in more, but I told him that I wasn't interested in, and beyond friends.
Kim was speaking with Jane Doe, and our captain at the time, Captain Lay, was speaking with Sean Great in the interview room.
David Lay, you are Sean. Sean. Great.
At the same time, Jane Doe and Sean Great were being interviewed at the station. Detective Brian Evans was part of a team sent back to search the house where Jane had been held captive.
We went upstairs. The mattress in the bedroom looked like a dirty, used mattress that was just found somewhere and used as a mattress. And then there were some restraints, as in tied clothing, tied to different areas of the mattress to where it looked like that's where Jane Doe was possibly tied up.
So just how did Jane Doe end up a prisoner in this house of horrors? The pair had been out for one of their regular walks and ended up at the house where Sean Great had been staying.
He told her that he had some clothes for her. She also had bagged up some food for him. And she said it was against her better judgment to walk through the door because it's unlike her. But she did.
He just started showing me the clothes, and I remember him asking if I had an extra Bible because he didn't have one, so I got him one.
So she sat down to read the Bible, and as she's reading, he began to pace. And then he charged towards her, grabbed the Bible from her hands, ripped it from her hands.
Jane Doe tells Detective Major that at that point, Sean Great attacked her.
I tried to push him away and get up. I was just doing everything, trying to kick, punch, but everything I did, he just did it so much harder.
And then what did he do to her?
Sexually assaulted her And her words were every way imaginable.
He would always bind my wrists, my legs at times.
The details were horrifying, but the interview takes a sudden turn when Jane Doe mentions the name of Elizabeth Griffith, one of 2 missing women police had been searching for.
She lived in the building next to me. Sweet, but like a child. Sean and I were playing badminton in the front yard, and Elizabeth saw us and came out. I think she just started, talking with us, and I don't know if I introduced her or she introduced herself.
Police discover there's a vital link between Jane Doe, Sean Great, and Elizabeth Griffith. All 3 of them would frequent this community center where they'd get free meals. That connection sets off alarm bells.
Was it possible that this man, unknown to law enforcement in Ashland, Sean Great, was also involved in the disappearance of Elizabeth Griffith?
When I stepped out of my office, my captain said, "Listen, I need you to go in and talk to him about what Jane Doe told you. Can you go in and see if you can nail down the facts regarding that, see if it parallels what he's saying happened?" "Hey, Sean, I'm Kim Major. Nice to meet you." The last thing he said before I walked in was, "And while you're in there, see if he knows anything about the missing girls."
Did you know anything about what you were about to face? What do you do?
Well, I walked down this hallway. I was told to go ahead and interview him, and this is where the interview room is. And when I came in, he was seated right here.
Oh, he's right here.
Yeah. "Hey, Sean, I'm Kim Major. Nice to meet you."
Before you came in here, did you have any idea what you were in for?
No, I had no idea.
You had your own recorder.
Yes,
And what did you do?
I took the recorder and just dropped it down my top.
Because you wanted a record of this.
Yes, just a backup in case something happened, and in this case, it proved valuable.
Valuable indeed, because the video system stopped recording shortly after Detective Major began interviewing Great. That means her backup was the only recording of the interview while the system was down.
So we're gonna get these cuffs off you.
You decided to take off his handcuffs.
Yeah,
Why?
I need to drop all of those things that would inhibit somebody's ability to relax or feel comfortable.
But out of his handcuffs, he could attack you.
He could.
You weren't thinking about that.
At that time, no.
In a city where law enforcement routinely interacts with the community, Sean Great was not known to police.
I had never heard his name. I had never had any tips about him. We didn't know him.
Sean Great had grown up in Marion, Ohio. That's about an hour from Ashland. He was a good-looking kid, charming.
With Sean Great, people talk about his eyes, they're piercing blue eyes. And women will talk about that. That's how they recall him, or his eyes.
He just had one of these very likable personalities, very soft, laid back, very unassuming type of personality. And it was just one of those things that you just almost couldn't hardly not like.
Sean never told me much at all about his background. I knew he had either a sister and a brother. I had never met his dad. He told me his mom abandoned him. He absolutely hated his mother.
Christina Hildreth dated Sean Great for 5 years.
I think before we moved in together, he had worked at, it was a motel, Super 8 or something in Marion, and he might have worked there a couple of weeks. That was about it. Other than that, I've never known him to have a job.
While unknown to police in Ashland, Sean Great had become a familiar face at the Croc Center.
He would just come to our hot meal and just kind of integrated himself into the community meal and the community that attended and started making friends. I'd see him around town, walking and talking with people, and he just really kind of absorbed what we had.
What did he say about Jane?
At first, he tried to present it as if she wanted him, like they were in a relationship, that she wanted the sexual piece of this.
One of the reasons why she said she wanted to marry me, because she was horny that day.
Eventually, as we peel that away, you realize she didn't want this.
Just as empathy had helped in speaking to Jane Doe, Major was using a similar approach, hoping to gain Great's trust. And slowly, he begins to open up, sharing details about his childhood.
May have started when my mom left me when I was a child. I come home from school and she's gone, but I don't blame her. I know I used to, but
Why did she leave?
she had to go find herself.
I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Does he admit that something happened with Jane Doe?
Eventually, he begins to talk about what happened and admits in layers. He admits that he had held her there captive, admits that he had tied her up.
I mean, looking at this whole thing, you forced her to have sex. She didn't want to.
I abducted her and I raped her.
And there it was. Detective Major had the confession, but the confession itself only raised more questions.
As he spoke about what he did to Jane Doe and would use the words kill, that he strangled her, you begin to realize this may be way more than Jane Doe. And earlier in my career, I probably would have stopped right at Jane Doe. Now, I realize it's a partial confession.
Detective Major brings the conversation back to Elizabeth Griffith, that missing woman who Jane Doe said also knew Sean Great.
We can't find Elizabeth. We'll find her, but we can't right now. Hey, look at me. Look at me. I need your help.
That goes on for just so long enough that he's acting like he has no idea what I'm talking about.
And then suddenly, Sean Great makes a shocking revelation.
I might not be able to take you to her, maybe someone else.
How many are there?
How much you say many?
Now, detectives knew Elizabeth Griffith and Stacy Stanley were missing, but now Sean Great seems to be talking about even more women.
I guess I'm ready to go ahead and get my lethal injection, but I'll tell you everything first.
Then things take a bizarre and frightening turn.
I'm thinking, this is not good.
At what point do you realize I might be dealing with a serial killer? You're in this very room alone with a serial killer.
The magnitude was becoming clearer to me. Whatever he did, I'm going to get it.
Police are now investigating whether they have a serial killer on their hands.
Are there any other girls in the house right now?
He had cut a slit into the back of the couch, and he was crawling in and out of the couch, and he would come out at night.
He says, "Meet the other me." I just froze. The first thing that hit my mind is a monster.
You don't normally have a killer show you how he did it.
He said, "I'll just do it on you." Kind of grinned. I'd get up behind him like this. He locks this in, he locks this arm in, he locks this head here, and then he just pushes down and squeezes.
Wow, wow.
At one point, he told me it was probably a good thing I had him in custody, because there would be more.
We knew that she was relatively young. She had perfect teeth. We had somebody that had confessed to her murder.
A fellow inmate tells you that Sean Great, that he wants to kill you?
No, that desire. I'm feeling it now.
Sean Great has confessed to his assault on Jane Doe. But what about those two missing women in Ashland? It's an urgent race to find out. Is he behind their disappearance? And can they be saved. And as you continue interrogating Sean Gray, time is of the essence.
Time is always of the essence. I feel like I'm against the clock to get him to say something before I say the wrong thing and cause them to stop talking at all.
And you're thinking he might have these two missing women and they could still be alive.
Absolutely. I start pressing him on where Elizabeth Griffith is. Can you take me to where she is?
I can't.
Why? Sean, look at me. If I take you in my little detective truck, can you take me out?
I don't know what you're talking about right now.
I'm looking for Elizabeth's body. Can you take me to it?
So she's dead?
Then suddenly Sean Gray reveals shocking information that maybe he can bring Detective Major to somebody else.
I might not be able to take you to her. Maybe someone else.
How many are there?
I don't know how much you say many.
What?
I don't know. There might not be none.
He says he might not be able to take me to her, meaning Elizabeth, but might take me to someone else, and that there might be so many or there might be none.
So he's playing with you.
Possibly he's wanting to tell me something. Will you take me there?
I think the took place in Mansfield.
Where she is? Where are you gonna take me to Mansfield? Or there's another girl?
Well, there is a girl. But nuts.
What happened? Is she gone?
She's been gone.
Is she in a house? What is she in?
What?
All right, what's her name?
Candace.
Candace
Cunningham.
Cunningham?
He tells you there's someone else and that woman is Candace Cunningham.
Yes.
Did you know who she was?
I did not know Candace. Candace hadn't been reported missing.
As our colleagues watching in the other room start looking for information on Candace Cunningham, Detective Major continues to question Sean for more information. After all, the two missing women in Ashland are still unaccounted for.
As I watched the interview, I could see that Sean was warming up to Kim. He was telling her more. Her methods were working.
What was it about you that he connected with, felt comfortable with?
He told me that I had empathy, that he could see it. Who else?
The house. Where I came from.
Yeah? Is somebody in there?
Yeah.
Who is it? Is it Elizabeth? Where is she in there?
In the closet.
So then Sean admits to you that Elizabeth's body is in the closet in that same house where he was holding Jane Doe.
Right in the same house. When he said that, I didn't know if she was alive or not.
As Kim's interviewing, I called Detective Brian Evans to tell him that Elizabeth was upstairs in a closet. He had been working on a search warrant at the house.
I was surprised by the information because officers had cleared the house. We headed upstairs to see if we could locate Elizabeth. This is an abandoned house that has old wooden steps. You could see bare footprints going upstairs.
One of the guys on scene said, there is no closet upstairs. That detective went directly to a particular room and looked up and realized there was a concealed closet.
There was a bunch of clothing just all over this closet.
There were stuffed animals piled down below.
As we started pulling away the clothes, you could see the fly activity and there was an electrical tape that was taped up around the sides of the door to like help from the smell to come from the door. And once the doors opened, there was another large pile of clothing. You could see the fly activity again all over the clothing.
Elizabeth's body was underneath all this.
Yes, it was.
What goes through your mind at that point?
Well, that it was a tragedy, and once the clothes were removed, her body, she was actually kind of like face down and hog-tied back.
Chilling.
Yes, it was very sad.
Sean tells Detective Major that the night of Elizabeth's murder all began when he says she called him late at night because she couldn't sleep.
She came over about 11 o'clock when she brought over Yossi, late Yossi. It just happened that the truck just reached up, just choked her.
We just didn't think it was possible. It couldn't have been Elizabeth. It just couldn't have been. And then we found out it was.
And we just sobbed and sobbed because it had come to a conclusion that we were not going to see our friend again.
You're in this very room alone with a serial killer.
Yes. As it progressed, the magnitude was becoming clearer to me.
I guess I'm ready to go ahead and get my lethal injection, but I'll tell you everything first.
He's bought into me, he's gonna talk to me. Whatever he did, I'm gonna get it.
Sean Great has confessed to the kidnapping and rape of Jane Doe, the murder of Elizabeth Griffith, and knowledge of the disappearance of Candace Cunningham. But Stacy Stanley is still missing, and Detective Major has a hunch he knows more about her as well.
As the hours tick by in this very same room,
Yes,
you got more and more out of him.
that's right. It just kept coming out in layers, a little bit more and a little bit more. Are there any other girls in the house right now? Yeah?
One down in the basement.
Down in the basement? What's her name?
Stacy.
He tells me that Stacy Stanley was in the basement of the home under a pile of trash.
Now remember, Stacy was that missing woman whose family had been searching for her after she was seen with a stranger changing her tire at that BP gas station. Sean says he was that stranger, and he tells Detective Major his version of what happened that night.
She came home with me. We kind of hit it off pretty good. And we didn't. When I saw her fast, I just snapped on her.
The mood at the police division was shock. It was just chaotic and pretty unreal.
Then you get another disturbing call. There's another body in the basement.
Yes, if you go down the basement, there's space behind the stairwell. There was multiple bags of trash stacked up, and underneath the trash is where Stacy was. There was actually a picture of just her hand kind of sticking out of the trash, like eerily saying like, I'm here.
Have you ever seen anything like this in all your years of police work?
No, I've been on other homicides and other tragic cases, but not to this magnitude, no. A lot of our local community was coming to the area, and you could tell the feeling in the air was that the people knew that we found bodies in that house.
What started as a rescue ended with a gruesome discovery that only got worse. Now families wait to find out if those women are their loved ones.
I got a phone call saying I need to get to Ashland ASAP. I don't want it to be my mom. I mean, nobody wants it to be their mom. I don't get to watch her grow old. My daughter don't get to She don't get to watch my daughter grow up.
Honestly, I think that my sister's in that house and they're not going to know anything for a couple hours.
They pulled out a couple pictures. They're like, do you guys recognize that? I said, yeah, that's my mom's picture.
It was very traumatic, having to see that, and that was my mom laying there,
It's bad enough what he did, but for some reason, thinking that he put her in the trash. Makes it worse.
It still touches you.
It does. For me, the day that cases don't impact me would be the day that I need to pack it in.
You want it to touch you. You want to feel
I want it to touch me. I mean, I don't want to be in an interview and lose control, but these ladies mattered.
But Detective Major had to put aside her emotions. Sean Great had confessed to a third woman named Candace Cunningham.
Candace was a little, tiny, vibrant woman, lived in the next county over, Richland County. Candace had not been reported missing, and Candace had dated Sean Great.
On her Facebook page, Candace posts about Sean Great, including this picture, and later writing, "I am back with Sean and love him." It was just 1 month before her murder. In the interrogation room, Sean describes strangling her in an abandoned house after an alleged altercation.
3 o'clock in the morning, I hit in the face with a bag of tobacco. I just snapped.
After I was done interviewing him, which went all day, I had asked him if he would take me to where Candace's body was.
What's going through your mind?
I was hoping that he wouldn't shut down from just having the emotions of going back to that place. So this is the scene where the home was, where Candace Cunningham was living with Sean Great. So there was a home here. He burned it down after he murdered her in the home.
Investigators took video of Sean that day as he led them to where he left Candace's body.
He's agreed to come out and show us where he put the body.
He killed her in a house that was here and then dragged her body toward the ravine.
Prior to burning that down, he carried her body wrapped up in a blanket. He carried her to the ravine.
Yeah, I remember these rocks.
How far down?
Carried her across the creek and up, straight up the hill, about between 10 to 15 feet. There's a big shrub.
While you were here, Sean got emotional.
He did. When we rolled up, I actually had to ask him, "Are you okay? You okay?" All right. And he said it was hard. It was hard.
What was it like to finally find this woman and give it some closure?
Like I wanted to go down to the ravine and rescue her, but she's gone. Frustrating that she hadn't been reported missing, that no one even knew at all.
As the investigation continues, Sean performs another show and tell.
I just lost it. And then I just turned her around.
Revealing more deadly secrets. During the interrogation, you asked Sean to show you his strangulation technique.
He said, "I'll just do it on you." Kind of grinned.
Next to that desperate call for help from a woman being held captive, police are now investigating whether they have a serial killer on their hands.
Sean Michael Great is being held for kidnapping tonight, and the sheriff's department says he should be charged with murder.
Lord, I told that Undertaker, Undertaker, please drive slow.
The community response was one of just complete shock. People had no idea that something like this could happen here.
Even though I don't know them, we are thinking about them and praying for them.
all I kept saying was, oh my God. And it was just like, this is unreal. No, we're not talking about the same guy.
I was just like, how? I knew he had this anger, but when I first found out, I couldn't comprehend that this was something he had actually done.
Those closest to Great were surprised to learn of his killing spree, despite them having their own chilling experiences with him. His former girlfriend, Christina Hildreth, says Great once spied on her from inside her sofa.
He says, I've been living in the couch. He said, when you came in, you were sitting on me. I seen everything you did. He had cut a slit into the back of the couch, and he was crawling in and out of the couch, and he would come out at night. That was terrifying.
And his friend Tim Dennis claims he had a text exchange with Sean that made his blood run cold.
He had, just out of the clear blue, asked me if he could borrow $20. And I told him no. All of a sudden, here's this whole slew of scathing messages. And he told me, bed bugs are coming to your house, roaches are coming. And then he makes this statement. He says, meet the other me. Honestly, I just froze. The first thing that hit my mind is a monster.
2 days after his arrest, you go interview him again now with Detective Evans?
Yes, I did. I asked him if there was anything else he wanted to get off his chest. Anything else you thought about that you haven't talked about? What's that?
It's a cold case. They've already found her. I'm thinking her name's Dana. I totally forget her name.
He tells me that he had killed a woman in Marion County.
10 years earlier.
10 years earlier.
Dana.
He didn't know her name for sure.
Who was she?
She had come to his mother's house to sell magazines.
Sean says he got upset because the woman didn't deliver the magazines that Sean's mother had ordered.
He said he was in town and just happened to see her. So he said he made up a story that he had money back at his house.
So that's when I fronted her. So you're gonna rip me off like you did my mom? And that's when I choked her out right here.
He said he placed her out by some railroad tracks. Her body had been found years and years ago. She just hadn't been identified.
Detective Major knows authorities will need to figure out who this Dana is, but they press on, probing Sean about key details of his other murders.
Detective Evans and I decided we might try to have him show us how he strangled the victims. So Brian Evans says, would you do this on a doll?
And what did he say?
He said, I'll just do it on you, and kind of grinned. I was like, okay, and then we got up.
So I roll the camera. Okay, this is Detective Major. We have Detective Evans in the room, Sean Great in the room. Then he kind of just gets behind Brian and does a hold on him.
Brad just went to grab her.
I look at Brian's eyes and I'm thinking, this is not good.
So I'm you, and you're Sean. So what did he do?
So he just came up behind. He said I'd get up behind him like this, and then he comes back. He locks this in, he locks this arm in, he locks this head here, and then he just pushes down and squeezes.
Wow, wow.
And at that point, I kind of mouthed over to Detective Major that I'm not doing that again.
You could have lost consciousness in seconds. He could have killed you.
I didn't put a whole lot of thought into that. It just went to getting the evidence, and I feel I have some training that I don't believe he would have killed me.
Police don't normally get this kind of demonstrative evidence. You don't normally have a killer not only confess to a crime, but then actually show you how he did it.
How'd you know to stop? She went like this.
This morning, suspect Sean Great held on a $1 million bond and facing double murder and kidnapping charges.
You understand the nature of the 3 offenses charged in the complaint, Mr. Great?
Yes, Your Honor.
He seemed kind of unalarming. I could understand why maybe women were trusting of him or went with him willingly, because he didn't look like a monster.
Law enforcement is on the hunt to figure out just who is this unidentified woman Sean Great has confessed to killing 10 years prior in neighboring Marion County.
Nobody knew who she was. It was a great mystery.
Investigators reached out to the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation.
My name is Samantha Molnar. My position at Ohio BCI is a forensic artist. I can do a clay facial reconstruction from those skeletal remains. We can actually 3D print an exact replica of the skull. I basically start doing the clay reconstruction from there, building the muscle structure on the face, placing the average tissue depth markers, and then kind of finishing the sculpture. We did receive some tips, but none of those tips led to an identity.
Detective Kim Major isn't just trying to crack the Sean Great case. She also has to juggle the full-time job of being a mom to 3 active kids.
All right, hook her up.
I'm always worried about her, no matter where she is. I would stay up at night, me and my little brother would, and just wait till she gets home.
I try to say that I am not overprotective of my kids, but I'm sure I am.
But could this case put Kim or her family in grave danger?
When the case was going on, our fair kicked off. I get a phone call, and it's a man, and he said, "I have your daughter." On Friday night, my husband coaches football. I actually took my younger kids to the football game, and I sat there, which was also surreal, seeing all the things around me and the lights.
People are happy.
They're happy, they're cracking the helmets. The band, watching my husband, hearing the whistles.
Friday Night Lights.
It's Friday Night Lights. That's small town America. And I brought my kids home, put them to bed.
That's when Detective Major's oldest son, Corbin, who's preparing to enter the police academy, comes into the room.
He's like, "What's going on, Mom?" I said, "Sean Great builds forts all over the place. He's like MacGyver. He stays in these things. But there's one in particular he keeps talking about."
He had a fort in the woods, and she explained to me where it was. And I remember there was a body recovery within a quarter to a half mile that deemed a drug overdose right on a gas line.
I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Yeah, there was a woman that died of an overdose, and they dumped her body there."
We also just learned a body was found in Ashland County. Police say a gas company worker found the body behind a tree on County Road 1908, just south of Route 30.
And he said, "Hold on a second."
I kind of marked out where she thought his fort exactly was and kind of marked the distance. It was on the same county road. I was like, there's no way this is just a coincidence. This has to be from him. It's just, there's no way it's not.
I said, "Honey, it's an overdose and a dumping." And he said, "That's because of her lifestyle. And people assume it's that." He said he did it. You have to go talk to him. You have to do something. The next morning, went in to the jail, pulled Sean Great out. There's a case from out in the county, meaning that we found a girl. And we're trying to see if you'll be honest, if that's something you had something to do with.
Rebecca Lacey.
Yes, sir.
I had a problem with her once.
31-year-old Rebecca Lacey's death had been ruled a drug overdose by the Ashland County coroner. But now, Sean Great shares what he says happened to her.
We played a game of pool. I went to the bathroom, right? I had some money in my wallet. And that's the first thing I did was just check my wallet. And it was gone.
He said she had stolen a few dollars from him, and he said he had strangled her. He talks about borrowing a car and taking her body out and dumping her in my county.
This is where Rebecca Lacey's body was found.
Yes, right against this tree right here.
When was she found here?
March of 2015, her body was found, and she had been here for a couple months.
Hard to believe that such a heinous crime could have happened here.
Should be a place of solitude, but instead, it's a place where a woman's body was discarded like she didn't matter.
But Rebecca Lacey's case was public knowledge, and Detective Major needed proof that Sean was actually involved in her death. So she asked him about details from the crime scene. What did Sean tell you about the placement of that memorial?
During the interview, when I had asked him to tell me some things that nobody would know, he said,
I can tell you the truth, because where I found the cross and stuff right now, she wasn't found there. She was found over by a tree.
He said you put the memorial in the wrong place.
yes. He was right. Nobody would have known that.
With this new information, authorities reopened the Rebecca Lacey case, ruled her death a homicide, and later charged Sean Great with her murder. Detective Major had formed a unique bond with Sean Great. You spent 33 hours with Sean Great.
Yeah, 8 interviews, 33 hours over the course of over a month.
So much so that they've been compared to Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter from The Silence of the Lambs.
Starling.
Well, Clarice, have the lambs stopped screaming?
What kind of toll does it take on you?
It may have made me a little more hypersensitive. When the case was going on, our fair kicked off. I get a phone call, and it's a man, and he said, I have your daughter. I said, who is this? And he won't answer me. And then he hangs up. They contact a guy who made the phone call. It was just a coincidence. The case probably changed how I handled something like that. That was a rough one for me that night.
A month after he's arrested, there's another chilling development. A fellow inmate tells you that Sean Great is targeting you, that he wants to kill you.
He said that Sean Great told him he was trying to find my gun on my body, that he thought it would be the ultimate to kill me.
This information did not lead to any additional charges against Great, but future meetings between Detective Major and Sean Great took place at the jail, where no weapons are allowed.
All along, do you think he was plotting to kill you?
I didn't know that initially. I went into a later interview with him. I said, are you still having that hunger that you talk about?
Can I ask you something? Will you be honest? Do you still have thoughts?
About that desire?
Yeah.
I'm afraid the desire probably grew when there wasn't no desire at first, but it might have gotten more. Now I feel like something that I had to do. I'm feeling it now. He told you he still had that hunger to kill.
Yes.
Sean Great says he had a hunger to kill. But Jane Doe and the victims' families had a hunger for justice. And now in court, they come face to face with a man they say is a monster.
It's April 2018, and Sean Great goes on trial at this courthouse for crimes against 3 of his victims: Jane Doe, Elizabeth Griffith, and Stacy Stanley.
It was the trial that everybody was waiting for. They wanted to know if this community, if these families were going to get justice.
This is not a whodunit case.
This is a he did it case. The defendant subsequently, over the course of multiple interviews, confessed to every element of every crime with which he is charged.
I ask that you consider that Sean freely and voluntarily gave information during several interviews which implicated himself in several serious offenses.
Jane Doe comes face to face with her abductor, bravely taking the stand against Sean Great, detailing her horrifying ordeal.
It was probably the most crucial testimony in the case.
How was he choked?
With both hands around my neck.
Did he let go of your neck?
I think when I stopped struggling and fighting, he asked me if I had enough. And I think I just remained motionless, and so he released his hands.
She testified about the terror that she went through during the time that she was kidnapped and sexually assaulted.
At the trial, they played the audio of your interview.
They did.
With Sean.
Yes. And I entered the interview room to interview Sean Great. You can hear my heart beating at key times during the interview.
Who was that you were talking to on the phone?
It made me realize that maybe it affects me physically more than I recognize.
Prosecutors reveal gruesome details about the deaths of two of his alleged victims.
People don't understand when you were in that trial, what you see and what you hear, you can't unsee or unhear ever. And those thoughts are always in your mind. You can't forget it.
It was too gruesome. It hurt you that much.
Yeah.
Even talking about it today. Why?
Just what she went through. It wasn't fair.
Sorry.
We, the jury, being duly impaneled, find the defendant, Sean M. Great, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the offense of aggravated murder.
Sean Great, guilty on 2 counts of aggravated murder as well as rape and kidnapping. But justice is bittersweet.
He devastated so many people, he changed our lives, and he took away not only Elizabeth's innocence, but the innocence of all of us that believed we were safe.
The day of his sentencing, Sean Great addressed the court.
I ask you, maybe forgive me, find in your heart someday, I know not today, someday, this mess, I'm sorry for all human beings to have to hear this, okay? I'm sorry. I can't change nothing. Believe me, I would. Not for me, but for you guys.
He asked us in court to forgive him, not for him, but for us. And obviously, I haven't forgave him for what he did.
Real justice would be for you to come with me for about 5 minutes, burn in hell.
The victim impact statements were extremely emotional and very powerful. We heard from Stacy Stanley's son and 2 of her brothers.
It doesn't affect just one person when you kill them, it affects everybody. You ever bury your mother? I had to pick a casket out. I didn't expect that this young.
The offender was found guilty, and a sentence of death by lethal injection shall be imposed on Mr. Great.
At the trial, you had justice for Stacy Balloons.
Yeah.
And Stanley Strong. And you released him when he got the death penalty.
Yes, there was quite a few people that showed up out there to show the support for the family, and that we were glad that he got convicted and received the death penalty. I mean, that was what we were hoping for.
Praise God.
In March 2019, Sean Great pleads guilty to the murders of Rebecca Lacey and Candace Cunningham in Richland County. But his first victim remained unidentified.
You are what you eat.
So the different things you're exposed to in your environment all show up in your bones. We learned that she likely was from a southern state, somewhere between Texas and Florida.
Then finally, a match.
Now this woman, a victim of serial killer Sean Great, has a face and a name.
In June of 2018, the community of Ashland, Ohio gathered at the site of Jane Doe's frantic 911 call.
Today, that house was finally demolished, bringing closure for residents and relatives of the victims.
Many people felt like they needed to be here today.
After we found out that Elizabeth was one of the people in the house, I would have nightmares about it. And I would see her in the window asking for help. I wanted them to tear it down so bad, and I was so happy the day that they did.
You were there when you saw the house on Covert Court destroyed, demolished.
I was.
What did that feel like?
It was a tangible piece that was destroyed, but the weight of the situation is still here.
2007, the remains of a female.
1 year later, another step forward, a new development in the search for the identity of Great's first known victim.
The preliminary results indicated that the victim was very likely Dana Nicole Lowry of Minden, Louisiana.
So genetic genealogy was able to provide us a family and a potential identity of this person. And what we did next was go down and swab the daughter of Dana. We were able to directly compare the DNA from the daughter to the DNA from the remains to be able to confirm that was Dana Lowry.
Sean Great pleaded guilty to Dana Lowry's murder. So now there are 6 known victims, and only one of them survived, Jane Doe. What would you say to that woman if you were able to talk to her today, to Jane
How
Doe?
brave she was. She saved so many people. If she hadn't have been brave and did what she did, we wouldn't have caught him. Then how many more women would have suffered?
Kim Major has retired from the Ashland Police Department, and she now works as the Safety Services Director at Ashland University. And she's written a book about the Sean Great case.
I don't want to forget this case. I don't want anyone to forget it. These women could have been anyone.
You titled the book A Hunger to Kill.
Those are his words. He has a hunger to kill.
Do you think there are other victims out there?
I don't think this is a closed book situation. I think more information may come out.
We never get to say our goodbyes.
As for the Stanley family, they're still dealing with the tremendous pain of losing Stacy. You miss her still?
Oh yeah, it's been 8 years. I haven't even opened a box of anything of hers. I just kind of put it behind like it doesn't exist to an extent.
What keeps you going?
I know she would want us to go on. And the boys, it just breaks my heart to see what they go through every day.
Right, you ready, girlfriend?
And you know, like he just had a new baby.
Grandma's? You see Grandma's?
And he took her out and set her on his mom's bench at the cemetery.
Hello there. Is it Grandma? I talked myself into going out there. Yo, that was so cute. She was smiling so big.
It's beautiful.
And that's hard for me to sit and see my daughter never gonna be my mom. Oh, she was a great grandmother to her first granddaughter, and I'm sure she would have loved mine just as much. My mom did not deserve that. Any of the women didn't deserve that.
And even though Sean Great's execution was originally scheduled for 2025, it is currently on hold until Ohio picks an alternative to lethal injection. His appeals have been denied.
He also denied 2020's request for an interview. Meantime, Kim Major's new book about the case, A Hunger to Kill, is available now. That's our program for tonight. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Deborah Roberts.
And I'm David Muir. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.
Investigators combed through rotas and security footage of a Texas hospital and uncover a chilling pattern.
There's really no crime I've ever handled quite like this.
Right out of the gate, it is we need to prove this man's guilt or innocence, either way.
One nurse is always on shift when patients unexpectedly die.
My Lord, you just don't think about going to the hospital and being killed.
A nurse with malicious intent is never something that they check for.
He's just watching, like it's a show.
I'm praying that they'll give me forgiveness. Oh my, it just passed out.
Detectives gather evidence until a picture of a suspect emerges. Which piece of the puzzle will reveal who is guilty of murder? What would be a killer's mistake? Kay Blanks is still mourning the death of her husband when she receives a troubling message.
I had buried James, thinking he died of complications with his heart. Buried him, 48 years, the love of my life. And then I got a text message one day, and a very good friend called me, and she said, "You need to watch this right now." And it was on the tube. It was a set of lawyers, several of their firm. And they said, if you knew anybody that was in hospital on the 5th floor, Tyler, Texas, in the whatever dates they gave, you need to call us immediately.
After a series of suspicious deaths, investigators had been called into the hospital where Kay's partner James spent his last days.
The hospital did a pretty good job at trying to outreach and start offering a channel for people that thought their family may be affected to send in that. Plus, they were being very proactive to go backwards in their medical records and try to find anybody that may have matched this profile of what was going on in the investigation.
My Lord, you just don't think about going to the hospital if your spouse being killed. You go there to heal.
The patients whose deaths police are investigating had been admitted to the cardiac intensive care unit.
For most people who don't work in a hospital, if you find out that someone had a complication from surgery, we think, well, of course that happens. But in a cardiac unit, it can happen, but it's actually very rare. Heart patients who've had heart surgery almost always recover and actually go home within just a few days.
Detectives are concerned if patients aren't dying of natural causes, they can only be dying of unnatural causes.
They knew there were things happening that were causing red flags, and they were doing anything they could to try to figure out, is this a medical causation? Are we having some issue?
The community was terrified, Often in a hospital setting, they're people that you don't even know their name, but you trust them because they work there. So the idea that someone could intend harm to you in that setting was really terrifying.
They are in a hospital. Yes, they are ill. Yes, they are recovering from horrific medical experiences. But we find that there's an other variable that's in this equation that is causing these deaths.
Detectives tasked with investigating the unexpected deaths at Trinity Mother Frances Hospital soon learn that it has a good reputation.
Tyler is about an hour and 30 minutes just east of Dallas, and it's the kind of place you want to raise a family. It's right here in the heart of the Bible Belt. I think the most distinctive thing at the time was Trinity Mother Frances. They've since changed their name to Christus, is that we have a very good and well-respected hospital district. Bad outcomes are very uncommon.
Tyler's a little over 100,000 people. Christus is one of 2 main hospitals in town. It's a large hospital. They care lots of patients. They had recently built a new heart hospital as a part of that.
Kay Blanks' husband James is admitted to Trinity Mother Frances after suffering a heart attack. He goes way back with his wife.
I met him in a bar, but he owned it. And I went there with girlfriends who wanted to teach me how to shoot pool. And he told me I just lit the room up when I walked in. Oh, honey, he was good looking. He was dark, brown eyes and dark hair. He had a great head of hair, always did. In fact, there were women that told him they'd like to run their hands through it. And he said, I don't think my wife would like that. But what got him was the heart. We were on a trip to New Orleans when he had the first heart attack. 8 months later, we were in Las Vegas. He had another heart attack. I guess it just got worse and worse.
Detectives revisiting files of suspicious deaths at Trinity Mother Frances learn that on January 5, 2017, James was admitted to the cardiac intensive care unit.
He had a triple bypass, 3 arteries. There was a lady who called me every 30 minutes in the waiting room. She was a nurse, and she would give me his progress about how he was doing. And he was doing good, all the way through. And then I went to his room. They'd had him up walking. He was sitting in a chair. And when I walked in, he did this to me. He was doing his hand, calling me over. And I walked over to him, and I leaned down and I kissed him, like that, because that's what he wanted. He died that night. He was the love of my life. Oh my God. He was gone. He was doing well. I said, what happened? He was doing perfect. He was doing great. What happened? And she said, we don't know. Everybody was shocked.
Detectives soon learn James Blanks isn't the only patient to die unexpectedly at Trinity Mother Frances. On June 16th, 74-year-old John Lafferty is waking from a successful operation.
He had woken up. He was verbal. He was alert. He seemed to be doing very, very well. He had FaceTimed his daughter. There were every indication, every expectation that this was somebody who was going to have a smooth recovery.
So when Mr. Lafferty died, it was puzzling to the doctors, and they wanted to try to figure out what the cause was. But at the time, really, they couldn't come up with any answers. They kind of had to shrug their shoulders and say it's undetermined.
Christopher Greenaway, a medical transport pilot and military veteran, is just 47 when he collapses at the gym.
Christopher Greenaway was really exceptional in a lot of ways as a patient. He was much younger. He had been a war veteran. He was actually a paramedic. But in terms of heart patients who need heart surgery, he was incredibly healthy and had almost no risk factors associated with his surgery. So when he crashed and died the next day, it was very shocking for the nurses and doctors because he was in such good health.
In July 2017, Ronald Clark is in the cardiac intensive care unit of the hospital.
Ronald Clark was a little bit different from the other patients. He didn't have heart surgery. He had vascular surgery, which meaning not on the heart itself, but on the aorta as it goes down towards the legs. But similar in that he had successful surgery and he should have recovered very quickly.
The doctors were thrilled at the progress he was making. And yet 24 hours after he has his surgery, he's brain dead.
Across 3 months, administrators and management are faced with multiple unexplained deaths and life-changing injuries.
The hospital was definitely trying to figure out what was going on. They did the things hospitals usually do, which is check their equipment to make sure there's no malfunctioning equipment either on the floor or in surgery, checking the medications that they're being given. But everything they would check was working properly and couldn't have caused these injuries.
In October and November 2017, 2 more patients experienced sudden deterioration. The hospital installs extra cameras at the cardiac intensive care unit.
The hospital for the previous deaths had checked so many things, they decided to upgrade the cameras in the unit. Again, not suspecting intentional behavior, but just thinking, well, if we have better surveillance of the hallways, maybe we can figure out, is it the same piece of equipment or is it the same nurse or what could it possibly be?
Detectives have to consider, is a killer stalking the wards of Trinity Mother Frances?
Who was the last person to be in that room? Was that person doing something positive or negative to the individual? Was it done with malice? Was it just simply done in care?
Will they get their man or woman before another patient dies? Detectives analyzing staff schedules and patient records realized that there's one nurse who's always on shift when patients die at Trinity Mother Frances. He is called Will Davis.
Anyone who knew Will Davis initially at the hospital or who was in his adult life would describe him as the guy next door, give his shirt off his back to help you. You know, the guy sitting behind you at church.
He'd been working at that hospital for 3 or 4 years. He was generally well-liked, very friendly. He worked primarily in the cardiac unit, but he also would float to other floors and help out, mostly intensive care units.
Former FBI special agent and criminologist Dr. Brianna Fox will one day speak with Will Davis about the investigations at Trinity Mother Frances Hospital.
Will told me that he had a great childhood. He said that he had a lovely family. They were very devout Christians. He said that he was on the football team. This was something that was sort of the beating heart of Tyler, Texas at that time. And he described his childhood as almost idyllic. Will portrayed it like he was close-knit with everybody.
He was a football star in a very small town, meaning he would have been well-liked and well-known by both kids and parents. He came in second in his class as far as grades, so he was intelligent.
Detectives probing Will's backstory, however, discover that at high school he begins to struggle with social norms. He started a relationship with a much younger girl.
We have Will Davis, who's around 16, 17. He's a normal adolescent, and he is attracted to this 12 or 13-year-old girl. And I think when you look at the age difference and the maturity level, this is something that really would be shocking to most people. It's really not an equal relationship by any stretch of the imagination in terms of their age, in terms of their maturity, in terms of what they're allowed to do, and all those things. Very quickly, he begins to monitor what she's doing, could try to control what she's doing. He pushes her at times. He's very verbally aggressive with her.
Her parents did not approve of that because he was too old. He continued to pursue that relationship even though he had been told to kind of move on. He became kind of obsessive about her and to the point of actually crashing his car into a tree in front of her house.
When Davis threatens harm to the girl's parents, the police are called.
But when you look at the things that Will Davis is doing, who is threatening to kill this young girl's parents if she won't stay with him, these are all threats in terms of what's going to happen to you or your family if you leave me.
As detectives investigate deaths at the hospital, they are intrigued to learn that one of the ward's most senior nurses behaved criminally at high school.
I think that Will's reputation in high school as somebody who is popular and somebody who gets along with everybody, somebody who's athletic, was a very big deal to him. And I think that may have contributed to his struggles when he went to college, because all of a sudden everything was different. He becomes depressed. He seeks out some antidepressants. He goes to get some help. He's told he's depressed. Then he's told he has bipolar disorder, and he's prescribed a couple of different medications, but really struggling from a mental health standpoint, from somebody who has been diagnosed with a pretty serious mood disorder and is trying to figure out a way to navigate that while he's in college.
So he started college and then dropped out, got married, ended up divorced, but then he got remarried and went back to school, and he had 2 small children. He worked quite a bit, but he was also going to school to become a nurse practitioner.
Despite battling mental health challenges, Will Davis sets his sights on a career in nursing.
Nurses take an oath, and they take their job very serious. I have good friends that are nurses and will tell you how serious they take the ethics of their job and the responsibility of that job.
He's made it through nursing school, which is no easy feat. He's now ambitious to go further than that. He's getting his master's degree, which many people acknowledge. That's quite an accomplishment in the medical field. I mean, if you're a nurse, that's another step up in terms of making money, in terms of prestige, in terms of reputation.
It seemed that Will wanted to become a nurse because there was a lot of job opportunities. It was a relatively stable and high-paying job. These were things that Will seemed to value, as many people do, and it seemed like a good career choice.
Records uncovered show that Will Davis obtains his registered nurse license on March 29, 2011. He works at Good Shepherd Medical Center in Longview, Texas, before moving to the Cardiac Intensive Care Unit of Trinity Mother Frances Hospital.
Will Davis was essentially responsible for the day-to-day upkeep of all of these patients. All of them were in to receive a relatively routine heart surgery, such as a single bypass. There wasn't really high-risk surgeries occurring there.
4 years into Will Davis's tenure at Trinity Mother Frances, detectives are probing a growing series of medical emergencies. It's then that another alarming incident occurs.
So Joseph Kalina was an American truck driver. Talking with his family, he loved his job, he loved his family.
58-year-old Joseph Kalina is recovering from a successful operation under the care of Will Davis's colleague, Ben Raspberry.
Came out of surgery neurologically intact, had no issues or complications from the surgery, and was put on the ICU wing there at the Heart Hospital for more monitoring. One of the things that happened in this case and that we found was that for lunch, Ben Raspberry asked Will to watch his patient for him as he went to grab a quick lunch. And as he was coming back from lunch is when the monitor was going off. Joseph Kalina was crashing with this unexplained event. And Ben Raspberry was actually in there responding as well while Will Davis was watching outside the room.
Joseph Kalina survives, but 2 days later, a scan reveals significant brain damage. Doctors and investigators work to find out why.
They're always going to try to figure out what medical causation is happening. And these type of events presented themselves as things that could be stroke or other watershed type things. The after imaging on the patients would show dead brain material and other things that from the effects of it Doctors had their suspicions. There was even some heads-up work done by the hospitals to quickly get patients that had this unexplained event happen, to quickly get them in for imaging, and in a few cases actually did capture what we know from the radiologists and the experts were air bubbles, residual air bubbles in the brain of the patients affected by this outcome.
So the hospital went through all their patients for the last couple of years and looked at those bad outcomes to see if they thought it fit the pattern of injury that Mr. Kalina had.
Comparing Joseph Kalina's scans with those of dead patients like 47-year-old veteran Christopher Greenaway, investigators realized that there's a consistent pattern between their deaths and Joseph's debilitating brain injury.
One of the things that comes up is there are these identifiable markers in the brain that show that there was something introduced, air was introduced into the brain that caused these massive incidents.
Air does not just happen in your brain. The suspicion was that air was being injected into the arterial line of patients as they were post-surgery.
And so there's a lot of reasons why that was very hard to detect. First is the arterial line is not a place where you typically inject anything, but if you inject air into it, that air will travel up the artery to the highest point in the body, which in a hospital bed is the brain. So as air travels up the arterial line into the brain, it then blocks blood from getting to the brain, which causes a stroke.
Anyone who has worked in the medical field knows that you have to be very careful when you're placing an IV into a patient, that there is no air in the passage.
Investigators fear the mystery of the patient deaths at Trinity Mother Frances might never be solved, until the brain scans reveal a crucial clue.
The murder weapon in this case would have been a syringe.
Evidence that an air-filled syringe is being used to murder vulnerable patients in Tyler, Texas, leads detectives and doctors to analyze footage captured by cameras outside Joseph Kalina's hospital room.
The hospital went back and reviewed the footage, and they saw Will going in and out of the room right before the crash.
Immediately, within minutes after Will Davis leaving the room of Joseph Kalina, he crashes and suffers this profound unexplained event that was occurring. The devastating part was the video also showed Will Davis staging himself down the hall, continuing to monitor the patient. There was a TV that he had access to that would monitor and show the vitals for the patients on that wing, and he kept looking up at that, and then he would look down the hall, and then we'd look up at the monitor. And for me in the investigation, that's hugely concerning. And instead of a response, he waited until the very last moment. One of the last nurses ran in with what they call the crash cart. And that's when he stood up and slowly moseyed his way over to the hospital room to sit and just watch everybody try to save a patient.
When you see the way he acts and the body language on the video, it's certainly hard to imagine somebody doing something like this on purpose to a patient. To walk nonchalantly down the hall as if nothing had happened would take someone who was incredibly cold and unfeeling.
When the alarm goes off, he's just standing there watching. All these people are crowding into the room. They're trying desperately to save this individual, and he's just watching, like it's a show.
He was watching almost with enthusiasm, sometimes even dancing as this was going on.
Footage of his behavior before Joseph Kalina's crash leads investigators to question Will Davis.
What happened is Will was initially interviewed about his interactions with that patient and gave a story that did not match the CCTV in the case. That was obviously a huge red flag. I thought it was interesting in some of the early conversation that he would bring up things that we knew as investigators we were interested in the case, but he would bring up things like the art line or bad surgery outcomes. As soon as we would turn it to any of the patients in general, you would hear his voice choke up.
Will basically said he really didn't do anything. He turned off an alarm on one of the IV pumps. But they could tell from the instruments in the room that his arterial line had been accessed and touched. But they still have to figure out what he's doing with the arterial line.
Detectives need more time, but they also need to keep patients safe. Pending further inquiries, police arrest Will Davis at the home that he shares with his wife and family on suspicion of murder.
Police, Will Davis, are you here?
Will, hey, let me see your hands, Will. Come over here, let me see your hand.
Let me see your hands. Step
over with me.
your shirt.
Right out of the gate, it is we need to prove this man's guilt or innocence, either way, and be okay with that outcome. But we're going to follow the facts.
I became involved in the investigation probably about halfway through, and our office assisted with hiring some of the medical experts to review it, because certainly, I mean, the police are used to solving crimes, but not this kind of crime. And I'm used to trying murder cases, but not this kind of murder case. So we really needed doctors who were experts in these fields to tell us if we were looking at the right thing or not. His family defended him and did not believe the charges, and most of his co-workers didn't believe them either. They really rallied around him, even raised some money for him in his defense.
We're good on the couch. Okay. Yeah, we're good on the couch.
Will initially proclaims that he's innocent. He tells his ex-wife, his mother, his lawyer, everybody that he didn't do it.
It's just normal procedures doing that.
What you have to understand, in our investigations, we do a search warrant house. I'm coming into your world. I don't know what weapons, seriousness of the situation. I just know we're coming in, we have a job to do.
None of his colleagues suspected that he had been involved, nor did they think any nurse would have been involved. They all trust each other, and they trust the doctors and nurses they work with.
Probing Will Davis's backstory further, detectives search for any possible reason that he might want vulnerable patients dead.
So he lived just outside of Tyler. He was married. They had 2 kids. One had just been born at the time. He was described as a hard worker, but we saw things in the investigation that kind of pointed to some things that weren't necessarily forthcoming. His mother talked about him even at one point as a teenager being on lithium. So just things that were red flags for us as investigators. But as you start uncovering more evidence, living outside of his means appeared to be a problem for sure. It was new trucks, new house, new pool, living the American dream, albeit without maybe respect to how much money he had in the bank. Appeared to be incurring a lot of debt, which in and of itself creates a lot of stress.
He bought a bigger house. They were putting in a swimming pool. He bought a new truck. Things that all on the outside look like he's got a great life, high-paying job, and everything was hunky-dory.
Detectives learn everything is far from fine for Will Davis.
Despite how it looked on the outside, it was not reality. Will was going through a lot of financial trouble. He had actually declared bankruptcy. He was over $135,000 in debt. He was essentially under enormous pressure to pay off his bills. He was putting the minimum down on his credit cards, and his wife at the time had absolutely no idea.
In fact, Will Davis's life is unfolding in ways that he never anticipated.
I think we all want success. We all want material goods and those things that show to the world that we've gained success. But the question is, we as criminologists ask is, how will I achieve that success? How will I achieve that material good?
And that's what really unraveled some of just the psychology of Will Davis, maybe what was a motive. But I think at this, anyone on that investigative team would just remind you that sometimes there is just evil.
I'm very concerned.
They told me everything.
I'm very, very concerned about his future.
With his wife watching on, police take Davis's electronic devices for analysis. They reveal more evidence.
It is really concerning to me that when investigators began looking at his electronics, that they found searches such as list serial killers by number of victims. Because what that tells me potentially is that Will Davis is evolving.
When they started looking at Will Davis's searches, they noticed that, again, he had looked at how to kill someone using air. Another piece of evidence was that he was at every single death. He was one of the few nurses that was on staff every single time a death occurred.
As investigators dig deeper, a mistake unravels a web of deadly missteps, each more damning than the last. Detectives keep going back to the video footage.
The security footage was really the most useful piece of evidence, and it's very cold, it's very shocking.
Will Davis is seen very clearly walking down the hall, takes a peek inside of the room that Joseph Kalina is in. Will Davis then takes a peek to see that the other nurses are in the room next door. And Will Davis, actually in a phone interview, told us he grabbed syringes just prior to walking into that room. He's in there for just about a minute and then walked out. Him being in the room, the video capturing that, and even his own admissions in phone interview, placing himself in direct care with the patient at the time of the incident was very, very critical.
We would talk to the nurses, whether they were still on his side or not. We would show them that footage, and many of them just broke down in tears. They knew what had happened to that patient and heard his lies, and seeing him walk out the way he did, they would weep, knowing that somebody that they worked closely with was able to kind of do that evil right next to them without flinching.
Sometimes a nurse would ask Will Davis to watch the patient while they went to the restroom, and then the event would happen. In another case, Will was put in charge of a patient because someone had to run and grab a quick lunch, and then that's when the event happened. The interesting part in our investigation, even from early on, was that over a 6-month period, from June until January of 2018, Will Davis was the only nurse on duty at the time of each of the events.
As they found more and more cases that met that pattern, it became more and more clear that Will Davis was a murderer and he'd murdered multiple people.
It was a sickening feeling. It was definitely a moment in the investigation that we had no doubt who our suspect was, and we had no doubt that we were dealing with evil.
After analysing evidence from CT scans, security footage and digital records, police charge registered nurse Will Davis with multiple counts of capital murder and aggravated assault.
The community was terrified. I think everyone's had that experience of trusting a healthcare professional, and if they walk in the room with a name tag on, you implicitly trust them, and if they say they need to give you a shot of something, you believe them. And you don't hesitate to think that they don't have your best interest at heart. So the idea that someone could intend harm to you in that setting was really terrifying and caused a lot of attention.
Davis is held on a $2 million bond.
Will initially proclaims that he's innocent. Not only going to fight the charges, but he was going to get his nursing license back and return to work.
Investigators, though, are convinced that they've apprehended a killer on the wards. Police appeal to the community. They ask for information from anyone who may have suspicions about the deaths of other patients.
They also set up a hotline for people to call if they thought their loved one might have been a victim of Will. And they went through all of those referrals from patients' families to see if they had similar kinds of injuries to Mr. Kalina and Mr. Greenaway.
I thought to have the gall to saunter around like that, looking at his damage, taking people's lives.
So when we were trying the case and the police were investigating it, we could really only go back about a year, because that's how long the hospital keeps the detailed records that we would need to prove it. But we were fairly confident this isn't when he started. It was just as far back as we could prove.
Detectives delve deep into James Blanks' death, but ultimately determine that there isn't enough evidence to charge Davis with what could have been his first known murder.
When James was killed, there was no camera. What I think is he killed James, and then he got by with it. He knew exactly how to kill him, how long it was going to take, what to give him.
Crucially, James passed away before investigators could gather the digital evidence needed to solidify their case. As detectives focus on building evidence for the cases they are confident in proving, 58-year-old Joseph Kalina, whose room Davis was disturbingly seen dancing outside, suddenly dies.
And in the case of Joseph Kalina, which really helped break wide open the case for the hospital to realize what was going on and was very damning in the investigation.
Prosecutors believe that Davis may have 11 victims in total, with 7 fatalities, but they ultimately feel most confident they can prove 4 cases: the murders of John Lafferty, Ronald Clark, Christopher Greenaway, and Joseph Kalina.
We prepared for this case for 9 months, just preparing witnesses and going through evidence, and then we spent several months picking the jury and trying the case.
Jacob Putman puts the prosecution's evidence to the court.
To this charge, Mr. Davis, how do you plead? Not guilty.
It turns out a hospital is the perfect place for a serial killer to hide.
The evidence was very, very clear. The medical evidence backed up everything that the video backed up, and when pieced together, really painted the picture of the serial killer that was running the floors.
After a 3-week trial, it takes the jury just 1 hour to return its verdict.
I expected them to deliberate a while just because they had a whole lot of information to go over. But we went over it in great detail for several weeks with them. And I think at the end of listening to all of the testimony, all of those doctors and nurses and experts, there really wasn't another conclusion they could come to.
He was found guilty of the crimes. You now have this relief because you know justice has been served, you know he's been found guilty.
From the footage of the hearing, Will seemed very aloof. It wasn't that he was necessarily concerned about the charges and the guilty verdict.
After the verdict, Davis returns to jail, awaiting sentence. He calls his wife.
Hello?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm here.
Yeah.
His wife was so devoted to him, she couldn't imagine that he had done this.
We deserve to know what really happened.
I'm not a serial monster, if that's what you're wondering.
She was horrified that he did it, but it was almost impossible for her to wrap her brain around.
I want you to know that I am not a malicious man. That summer, we had a lot of finances, and of course, some of that's my fault. I want you to have a nice house. I want you to have a nice tool. I want you to have a nice car. I want to have a nice truck and a nice car. I want to have all these nice things. So basically what I did is get us in a big financial hot mess. And then I had to pressure myself to work so many days a week. And I was trying to work every day I could. I couldn't afford to be off. I couldn't afford to be called off. And I made sure that people stayed ICU. I tried to make sure people stayed ICU a little bit longer, just a little bit longer, so I could work.
We would never want you to prolong someone's stay just for your financial benefit.
There's a few reasons why I did not believe what Will had said about his motive for these murders. One was there was already so much overtime before he engaged in any of this behavior. He was having to turn down shifts because he just didn't have enough hours in the day to work 24/7. Beyond that, if he was killing patients, that would be the opposite of requiring additional care. If they're dead, they're not getting any care. So it didn't really seem to add up.
If you're murdering somebody, how is that going to result in more overtime?
Trust me, my heart has got so many scars in it, and I'm so torn because of the things I've done. And I got myself in such a horrible mess. I'm praying that they'll give me forgiveness.
It's almost like I've done these horrible things that I know people would hate me for, and yet I need to somehow soften it and justify it and rationalize it. And it's just, it always surprises me, because you think, once you cross this line, would you really care? I mean, you're not caring about human life.
Davis's calls to his wife are presented to the court during sentencing.
And then they go into victim impact statements, and now it's the humanization, it's the reality for people to hear precisely and for the public to hear precisely the effects of the devastation that Will Davis chose to bring upon his victims. I'll never forget, and I believe it was Miss Blanks giving her statement to the court.
While James Blanks's death was not among the 4 for which Davis was convicted, it was introduced during sentencing to highlight a broader pattern of harmful behavior. James's widow, Kay, was also given the opportunity to speak.
So I stood there and looked right at him. He has black eyes, it seems like. Held his face kind of like something weird with his hands. But he is down, and I said, I am Kay Blanks, James Blanks' wife, your first victim. And I said, my husband did not deserve to die like that. And I said, I forgive you, because God tells us to forgive. And I'm led by the Holy Spirit to tell you, because we won't be forgiven if we don't forgive. And I do believe that. Oh, and I told him when I forgave him, I said, but I feel just like everybody else feels about you. Something's really wrong with you. The man is not safe with people he will kill again.
When you look at this type of evil and these type of conscious decisions made by a person so calculated, so cunning, and so intentional, if there's ever a case that deserves the death penalty exists for cases like this.
Davis is sentenced to death. In 2023, Dr. Brianna Fox speaks to Davis on death row.
Will seemed to have a lot more emotion than the average serial killer. He smiled, he laughed, he joked, he played practical jokes on his friends. He would do things that showed a broader spectrum of emotion than the typical person who engages in murder, let alone serial killing. He didn't really seem to appreciate the gravity of the murders that he had committed and the harm he inflicted on these families and the victims. I asked if there were any other victims, and that was when he confessed to me for the first time that there was an additional victim that happened before this entire string came to awareness of police. He also said this was a different motive. He said that this was more of a mercy killing, that she was in such bad condition and her family refused to essentially let her die.
After the trial, Will admitted to having killed someone in 2016, and that might have been his first one. It might not have been, we don't know, but there are certainly others out there that he killed and will never be able to prove.
As Davis awaits execution, investigators reflect on what finally brought a prolific serial killer to justice. His biggest mistake was in behaving so brazenly on the wards, where he committed murder. It drew attention to himself.
The security footage was really the most useful piece of evidence, and it's very cold, it's very shocking, and we saw that over and over again when we were preparing for trial.
His movements caught on camera proved to be a killer's mistake.